Probably the most common misconception about the Torah is that it's been abolished. The majority of people believe that it no longer applies and that it's not what the Creator considers good and right in His sight, and that it is not the choice of life. As many of us already know, that is clearly not the case, yet these beliefs have persisted despite what the Torah plainly says. And in considering this, there are probably quite a few of us that only realized that the Torah matters at some particular point in time. We may have believed in the past that the Torah didn't matter, just as many others still continue to do now. And for some of us, during that time in the past that we believed that the Torah didn't matter, we may have read over the Torah a number of times, and we surely had seen that evidence, that proof which we are now able to recognize plainly today. We just never realized it until that certain point in time. So what is it that changed? Did the text of the Torah suddenly change? Probably not. And if it wasn't the text that changed, then what was it? Our paradigm changed. Our ability to notice and process that information, the information that the law still matters, our paradigm about that changed. As an analogy, probably most of us have worn sunglasses at some point. We put the sunglasses on and we see everything through that dimming of the sunglasses, and we have that darkness effectively projected onto everything else that we're seeing. And we've probably also had the experience of having sunglasses on and then forgetting that we had them on, not realizing that we still had them on until someone or something finally prompted us to realize that. At which point we took them off and then, wow, everything looks different. We see different colors and different levels of brightness and so forth that we weren't seeing before, and we didn't even realize that was there to see. What if we've had these sunglasses on and never even realized it? Incoming information is being filtered through that, and we don't even know it. We don't even know what's going on beyond that. Just like the belief that the Torah doesn't matter, having that paradigm can prevent us from seeing what is plainly there because of that filter that we have, that filter of that belief. And in this video, I want us to consider another misconception about the Torah. And just like the first time that many of us heard that the Torah still matters, this idea may seem very strange to us at the beginning. And some of us may not yet be willing to accept it until a later point in time. And that misconception is, the Torah does not command a temple. In looking at this, we are going to look at many of the commands regarding the Levitical inheritance, the blessings of obedience in the land, the passages of Deuteronomy chapters 12 through 16 regarding the place, and the specifics of the sacrificial commands. Typically, the temple is considered a fundamental part of the Torah. We have all of these sacrificial commands that need to be performed, and we have these commands regarding the priesthood and regarding their duties and the rituals that they participate in. And surely, all of that implies the tradition of the temple, especially since later prophets and later traditions have insisted upon a temple. But as we know, just like some prophets and traditions claim that the Torah has been done away with, there are other traditions and prophets that claim another part of the Torah was done away with, which is the commanded holy place of the Torah. The Torah commands a sanctuary, a holy place, the house of Elohim already. The people were commanded to build it, and they did. Exodus 25, 8 through 9. and they shall make for me a sanctuary, and I shall tabernacle in their midst, according to all which I am causing you to see, the build pattern of the tabernacle, and the build pattern of all of its articles, and so you shall make. The sons of Israel were commanded through Moses to build him a sanctuary. They shall make for me a sanctuary, and I shall tabernacle in their midst. He caused Moses to see visions of it, and to receive words on how it was to be built, and this is how they were to do it. This is the sanctuary commanded in the Torah. And before we continue, we need to consider some terminology in order to help us with this. First, the word mishkan. Mishkan is the word for tabernacle, like we saw in Exodus 25:9, the build pattern of the tabernacle. The word is not exclusive to the tabernacle, but it is used at times to refer to it. One thing that we don't want to miss, though, is that many translations will use the English word tabernacle to replace other Hebrew words also, and we will get to that shortly. However, in this video, when we see tabernacle as a noun, it represents the Hebrew word mishkan. And a related Hebrew word for us to know is shakan. Shakan is the root verb for tabernacling. It means to tabernacle. It is the verb that the noun mishkan comes from. It is not exclusive to the tabernacle, and some English translations will render this word as dwell or as place at times. However, we will be treating it as the verb to tabernacle. One final Hebrew phrase that we want to look at is Ohel Moed. Ohel means tent, and Moed means meeting or appointment. Ohel Moed is by far the most frequent way that we see the tabernacle referred to in the commandments, yet it is rarely translated completely literally or clearly. Usually we see tabernacle of the congregation or something similar instead, but literally it is tent of meeting. This is important for us to note because it will likely stand out as the key difference between the translations used in this video and translations that we will see outside this video. Ohel Moed is tent of meeting. Now that we've looked at some of these terms, the first thing I want us to consider are these verses which are commonly cited as proof texts of a temple. These are exclusive to Deuteronomy chapters 12 through 16, and they refer to the place. And I want us to consider these passages in a different light, in a more literal translation, and then we will look at the evidence for the tent of meeting. Deuteronomy 12:5, but rather to the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose from all your tribes to place his name there. To his tabernacling you shall inquire, and you shall come toward there. This is the beginning of the references to the place in Deuteronomy. There is a place that Yahuwah is choosing from the tribal allotments, which he will place his name there. This is further described as, to his tabernacling you shall inquire. Tabernacling is related to shakan, as we looked at earlier. It does not say mishkan in this case, but it refers to where he is tabernacling. And we might also look at Deuteronomy 12:11. And it shall be the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose in it, to tabernacle his name there. Toward there you shall bring all which I am commanding you. There will be a place that Yahuwah chooses in it, and he will tabernacle his name there. This is also from Shachan. He is choosing a place to make his name tabernacle there. And this place is where everyone is bringing what we are commanded. We will get into the specifics of what we are commanded and the sacrifices shortly. I want us to consider that these verses and the verses like them in Deuteronomy 14 and 16 are the extent of the supposed proofs of a temple in the Torah. And all of these verses are worded very similarly. None of them say a temple, and none of them say the tabernacle is temporary or that it is being done away with. Just like with arguments about the Torah as a whole being temporary or being done away with. One just has to assume that the Torah allows for that, or allows for a temple, since there are later works that claim a temple. And as a result, one would have to assume that these verses are the ones that imply it. But even if we go into books like Joshua, we can see that they expected no change to the tabernacle. And if we look more carefully at the commands of the Torah, we will see very plainly what is commanded otherwise. Since this is the extent of what can be shown in the Torah to supposedly support a temple, I think it gives us a reason to reevaluate it, especially in the light of the explicit commands that we will look at. Naturally, whenever the sons of Israel would enter the land, the tabernacle would need a place to dwell. There would need to be a place in one of their tribal allotments that the tabernacle would need to be established at. When the sons of Israel entered the land, each tribe was going to be given an allotment of land, an inheritance for them. However, this was not the case with the tribe of Levi. The Levites would not be given an inheritance of the land in the same way that the other tribes would, because they had a unique arrangement. Numbers 18:21. And to the sons of Levi, behold, I give all of the 10th in Israel for an inheritance, the exchange of their service which they are serving, the service of the tent of meeting. While the other tribes would be given an inheritance of land, the Levites had a different inheritance. They would be given the 10th, the tithe, for their inheritance, which is the exchange of their service. What service are they commanded to serve? The service of the tent of meeting. Numbers 18:23. And the Levite shall serve, he, the service of the tent of meeting, and they shall bear their iniquity. An enactment of duration for your generations, and in the midst of the sons of Israel, they shall not inherit an inheritance. The Levite is serving at the tent of meeting, and this is an enactment of duration. It is for your generations. This is an enduring command, and it is a command for the generations of Aaron and the Levites. Obviously, if it is for their generations, it is continuing for them as long as they continue. Their inheritance is the tithe, the result of their service at the tent of meeting. Numbers 18:26-31. When you shall take from the sons of Israel the 10th, which I give to you from them in your inheritance, it shall be reckoned to the Levites as the income of the threshing site and as the income of the wine vat. And you shall eat it in any place, you and your house, for it is your hire, exchange of your service in the tent of meeting. One of the implications of this exchange, the fact that it is their inheritance, and the fact that it is the tithe, involves when such a thing would take place. At what point would Israel have the tithe? At what point would Israel be gaining the yield of their farms, their grain, and their wine? That would require them to be in the land. They would have received their inheritance in the land of Canaan, and be dwelling in it, and be working the land. This is where the grain and the produce for the tithe would come from. And while the rest of the tribes of Israel are dwelling in their inheritance, they are living in the land and working their farms. The Levites are also living in the land and are working at the tent of meeting. The tent of meeting continues to exist while the people are in the land. And despite what we have heard in the past, similar to what we've heard regarding the Torah in general, it is an enduring enactment for their generations. The Levites do not receive an inheritance of land. Instead, they receive the inheritance of the tithe in exchange for their service at the tent of meeting. These commands and many others explicitly hinge upon the fact that the tent of meeting continues to exist. And one reason that we may not have noticed these commands and many others that we're going to look at might partially be because of translations. As mentioned, many translations will say Tabernacle of the Congregation, and the more literal translation, as mentioned, is Tent of Meeting. And we could say that, well, tabernacle and tent, those are fairly close, but the problem that we have is that in English, tabernacle can be used in a much larger variety of ways, and we don't think about it in that same specific way that we would for tent. So it could be easy to not really notice that, and to not really realize that something else might be going on than what we had heard or what we had assumed before, instead of just assuming that the Torah advocates for a temple and not really seeing the specifics of what the Torah plainly says. Now that we are starting to notice tent of meeting, that opens up a different possibility. And we could also start to consider many of the specifics of the sacrificial commands. These sacrifices are not likely to be a subject of in-depth study for most of us. Even if we read over it, the fact that we are not actively engaged in doing them means that we're not thinking about them in that same level of detail as we do for commands that we're applying on a daily basis. And I want us to consider, we are given these sacrificial commands as a part of the way that we are worshiping Yahuwah. And as we already know, many of these rituals are very specific. They tell us exactly when the offering is done, what species of animal is being offered, how that animal is being slaughtered, what side of the altar the animal is slaughtered on, what is done with the blood, how the animal carcass is processed afterward, and so forth. Many of these sacrificial commands involve all of these details. And so if we were wanting to follow the commands, we would want to follow those specifics of those rituals. If the command says, offer a goat, why would we offer a donkey? Or if the command says, offer a female, would we want to offer a male instead? Or if it says a year-old, would we offer some other aged animal? What would be accomplished by contradicting the specifics of that command, or performing a sacrifice that is not according to those commands? And while we are thinking about that, let's look at some of these specifics. Exodus 29:38. And this is what you shall do on the altar. Lambs, sons of the year, 2 for a day continually. This is the continual daily offering, which is supposed to be done every day. And what do we see? It is an offering of lambs. They are yearling lambs, sons of the year, and there are 2 of them. The passage continues with when they are offered, and how they are offered, and what is offered with them. And it also tells us where they are offered. Exodus 29:42. Continual burnt offering for your generations at the opening of the tent of meeting before Yahuwah. The opening of the tent of meeting is where the continual offering is done. The daily offering is commanded for your generations. It continues with the generations of Aaron, the priests. And this command tells us explicitly where it is to continue. The opening of the tent of meeting. Is this part of the command something to be ignored and rejected? Or is it something to be paid attention to? And I invite you to consider more explicit examples of this. The tending of the menorah is done in tent of meeting. The consecration of the priest, opening of tent of meeting. The continual burnt offering, opening of tent of meeting. The burnt offering of the herd, opening of tent of meeting. The peace offering of the herd, opening of tent of meeting. The peace offering of a lamb, before tent of meeting. The peace offering of a goat, before tent of meeting. The sin offering by the priest, opening of tent of meeting. The sin offering by the congregation, before tent of meeting. The meat offering, it is eaten in court of tent of meeting. The sin offering, it is eaten in court of tent of meeting. The cleansing for a birth, at the opening of tent of meeting. The cleansing for the leper, opening of tent of meeting. The cleansing for a flow, opening of tent of meeting. The Day of Atonement sacrifices, opening of tent of meeting. The guilt offering, opening of tent of meeting. The jealousy offering refers to the tabernacle. The cleansing of the Nazirite at the opening of tent of meeting, and the fulfillment of Nazirite, opening of tent of meeting. Can we now notice a pattern? The tent of meeting, the tabernacle, is an explicit part of a number of the sacrificial commands. Many of these commands are said to be enduring commandments that are for your generations. The way these sacrifices are commanded to be done requires the tent of meeting if we are going to do them the way they are commanded. The tent of meeting continues as Israel enters into the land of Canaan. Not only is it a part of the Levitical inheritance as we looked at, but it is actually one of the blessings of being in the land and obeying Yahuwah and his Torah. Leviticus 26:11, and I shall give my tabernacle in your midst. When the people are in the land of Canaan and are obeying him, they are receiving the blessings of the land, the yield of their ground and their fruit trees, just as it says. And his tabernacle is given in the midst of Israel. And what is his tabernacle? Moses uses a similar wording when he refers to the tent of meeting. He refers to the tabernacle of Yahuwah. in Numbers 16:9 to serve the service of the tabernacle of Yahuwah. And later on, the congregation uses that same term. Surely this tabernacle of Yahuwah is my tabernacle in Leviticus 26:11. The blessing of being in the land and of obeying him does not say that the tabernacle is being done away with. It says that his tabernacle will be given in our midst. This is despite what rabbinic traditions might say or what the conventional wisdom has said. There is a commanded holy place in the Torah, and it is his tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Nowhere in the Torah do we see any explicit command of a temple, and nowhere do we see that the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, is supposed to be temporary or that it's supposed to be done away with, just like nowhere do we see that the law itself is temporary or done away with. Instead, it is the commanded sanctuary of the Torah. The Torah sacrificial commands and rituals explicitly hinge upon it, and the inheritance of the Levites in the land requires it. It is true that many people have believed in a temple, and that there are people seeking the construction of a temple even now. And there are traditions that claim this must be the way to go. And there are traditionally accepted prophets that do likewise. However, let us keep in mind what the commands of the Torah say. Thanks for watching, and remember the commands. Shalom.